Very good afternoon, everyone. So good to see so many of people joining in. So today we are again one of the very important subject in today's date. That is regarding importance of upskilling of recruiters, and this is something a very important and pertinent subject we have in today's staffing industry. As recruiters are not only about recruiting people, but they are the actual backbone of any staffing company. They want to scale up faster, and they are not only about hiring manpower, but we are the person who are dealing with multiple channels, multiple sources to source the right set of talent for every staffing company. So, considering all those pointers in mind and all those prime concerns and issues which we have, so I would like to invite Mr. Pramod, who has been very helpful for us in terms of handling such matters and issues. And he is the CEO of Two Comps Consulting Limited and board member of ISF. And we also have Mr. Vijay Shivram. He is the CEO and Quest IT Staffing, and he'll be joining in just a minute. And he's just about logging on his laptop. So, Mr. Pramod, I would like to ask one very small and very pertinent question that we have. That how do you see recruitment or the recruiters as an uh, shaping up post pandemic, and what all challenges do you see that why do you feel that necessity of importance of upskilling of recruiters? What all things does it contribute in terms of uh, scaling up of any organization faster?
Sure. Thanks, it's a very interesting subject for all the entrepreneurs, recruiters, and the recruitment community. And thanks a ton, Saurav and ISF, for giving us the platform to be able to communicate on this subject. Upskilling of recruiters. I think your topic is post-pandemic, but I'm going to take the liberty of trying to add that it's not post-pandemic. I think by and large, we're looking at recruiters skilling and upskilling. Post-pandemic, could be certain challenges which are separated, but so I think since we know that the pool of people that will be attending today will be a set of technology recruiters and non-technology. I'm going to try and break down my discussion into both one in technology recruiters and how they should be IT recruiters as we call them, how they should be upskilling, and one non-set of IT recruiters. That's how I've tried to break my thoughts. One of the clear things that we look at when it comes to both these, so the common areas that I feel that are upskilling areas that one needs to do, I think by and large, we are talking about recruiters from the time that a newspaper article would go out and certain resumes would come, where screening was essentially the largest activity that one had to do. Move to a stage where we had job boards where we had to search ourselves with algorithms and know algorithms for ourselves. I think that's the second leg of journey that we have done in the community. And today is a stage where we are, our resume flow has come from multiple areas, just not the job boards, but the social media, and our own organizational databases are there, which need to be triggered. And the WhatsApp is a very large channel for sourcing today. We have various WhatsApp groups and Insta groups and various other methods of sourcing. So the role of a recruiter is only transforming and widening from that sourcing standpoint. So while there are sourcing issues that one needs to look at and upskill, the number of channels the required for sourcing is much larger today at this point of time. So and depending on what skill or what you are hiring for, the channel will have to be leveraged. So it's no more one single channel sufficing for everyone at that point of time. I think the channels are only increasing. There are recruiters in the general staffing business who probably don't even need to touch job boards today and can do their entire set of recruitment from over WhatsApp. And that's a skill that is already prevalent, and one needs to look at that method and much more, because for certain skills, if you got your network right, if you built your base right, WhatsApp is all. I think all if you need to just have yourself prevalent in multiple groups, it could be methods of people can make broadcast list for that matter for all their contacts and start circulating. They could have alert mechanisms. So the role of technology when it comes to sourcing and channels have widened the need for a recruiter to be open to learning on various channels at this point of time, and these channels are only going to grow and increase. I mean, recently we've got share chat. I mean, there is a video that one would play, and a YouTube video, one would play and circulate those videos to be able to explain the candidate base, what could be the what could be the job requirement, all that all about. So I think the use of technology when it comes to recruiters on their own, and which can help them explain what they really hire for, what they really do, is very large. I think that's one clear shift that we see, and that's an upskilling that it's more about technical, it's more about a bent of mind that I see as people to explore. I think we need to have people explore more than one job board or job boards, if I can put all of the job boards together, because I think the channels are increasing. And for some of us, I'm sure recruiters who are practicing this will know, but some of these channels are actually much hotter and much better because the conversions are better, and probably the effort required versus delivery could be very, very different. Of course, you need to be able to clearly create a target audience for yourself and smart enough to create those channels for yourself. I think if you've done that well, I think the numbers or the value or the effort versus realization can be hugely different. So that's on the sourcing channels. I think that's one large area that we see as a huge shift, and these channels will keep coming. Like every new platform which comes over will become a share, will become a channel for people to explore. So once on the channel, then I think the other thing that we need to understand is most of us as recruitment companies, or even for that matter, working on the client side recruiters, the our own internal technology enhancements have really, really gone up. I think all of us, all the recruitment companies are now working with stronger ATSs than they were. Thankfully, we've got fantastic applicant tracking systems with a lot of our own, features which are there. So every recruiter needs to be able to come back and look at what their organization has and completely leverage technology. I always say to my team that technology availability is one thing, and leveraging that technology or the tool in your organization is another. So I think that's where larger challenge is coming up. Earlier, there was a chance that people would ignore it, but you can't, because the technology is much faster. If you are not leveraging your own technology as much, it is not going to work. If you're still on the Excel sheets and rechurning your Excel sheets, that's of course one of the very good things that you could do. But if you don't have the ability to understand your own technology tools and see what you could do, I think that's another. So tools, if you're working on tools and if your organization had tools, most of the tools today give you a method to come back and check a resume and match various other jobs that one can do today. In specifically coming to technology, if you look at technology, candidate is the commodity. It's not the requirement. In today's market, specifically post pandemic, we're seeing the candidate become very, very difficult to get. So if you've got a right candidate and you can actually check within your own system what are the jobs that match, it is actually something that one can do. So if that technology is available in your organization and you are not sort of getting to upskill or use that, I think that's a miss. So again, what I'm saying here is explore technology available to you, which could be publicly available with sourcing channels or internally available based on the same. Because the artificial intelligence or the machine learning have the ability to tell you which candidate that you may have, which may be a hot candidate, may not be potentially available as a requirement for the set of requirements that you are working on. Each of us as individuals work on 3 to 4 mandates, but maybe the number of mandates open within the organization is far more larger, and one can try and leverage that within the organization. I think that's one thing that we need to evaluate and see how recruiters create a bent of mind going beyond what they may have as requirements in hand, but to leverage their potential candidates versus across all their requirements. I think that's one mind shift I see that one needs to do. So it's not only about using of technology, but thinking differently and making sure that you start thinking candidate as a commodity, and ensure that every single candidate that you try and interact, see how you can leverage a monetization of that from, if you're working on the recruitment consulting side. So that's the second shift that I see. Understanding the tools that your client uses is another problem. I think most of our clients are also using extremely high technology. So how would they sort of mine their resume, and how we can sort of leverage our own methods to make sure that once the candidate which we've put into their database is available open for others, we are able to come back and leverage that, specifically when you work on contractual side. If you're doing the contract to hire kind of roles, I think that's one thing that one needs to do. So Clearly, I think post-pandemic these have gone up because I think technology usage across the organization, clients have gone up, and more platforms are coming. So I think that's one side that I wanted to cover up. What's also happening is, I think the with the use of technology, there's also a lot of problems that have come post-pandemic. A lot of our hiring today happens, or most of our hiring, at least in the non-blue collar, gray collar space, is complete sourcing to onboarding to exit is now on video calls. With that comes in a lot of challenges about impersonation, lip syncing, and someone else. Actually, there are call centers, I'm told, which are running just to clear the candidate's interview today, for that matter, so which actually impersonate on your behalf and clear candidate interviews. So I think with that, validation of your candidate and how do you validate your resume really becomes very important. I think that's one challenge that we see, and that's a very huge, I mean, if I look back 5 years back, I'm not very happy and proud saying it, but an average recruiter was a keyword searcher and we would probably do really well. So if you're a good keyword searcher and you put in more resumes in the system, it'll do really well. Gone are the days. One, I think the clients are looking at you having much better ratios that you want to sort of come back and meet. I mean, if you've sent in 4 resumes, 6 resumes, you should see 1 or 2 conversions. I think that's one need of the hour. And amongst that, we should not have candidates which are probably not, which are fake candidates, or if I can put in that perspective. So I think that's one large challenge that comes our way, which requires a huge change in terms of how one would sort of read the resume. How would someone, I think, reading the job description and understanding the job and being able to not only read the job description but also evaluate the candidate based on job descriptions, whether the candidate is possibly the right candidate, is very important. And that's what will probably help us to reduce the number of fake candidates and ratios. That is better. I think that's becoming a very important angle. One can try and leverage technology, but by and large it needs human intervention to still assess the resume, whether the resume is the right fitment or not. All said and done, our technology available is not going to be 100% able to match whether the person specifically has worked on a domain or a particular area. So one still needs to come back and do a lot of better validation than what was required earlier. I think that's one clear change that we are talking about. Today's recruiter is no more a person who would just communicate the job to the candidate. There was a challenge earlier that when you would call up a candidate, you would need to explain them the job description very well. The companies which we are trying to market needed marketing and efforts. But today, most of the organizations that we hire for are extremely high visible on the internet. A click or a Google by a candidate will, he or she will get complete information about the job or for that organization. So what's important is to build a relationship with the candidate. It's not anymore very important to just communicate effectively what the job description was, but to actually talk about the relationship angle. I mean, how good are you? How good are you with your candidate will make a lot of difference, because one, the recruiter has earlier also, a candidate also had earlier also choices and has more choices to apply now. The organization's own career sites are far more stronger than one earlier it used to be. Their reaction times are much better. So one would need to make sure that you build and break the ice with the candidate and build a relationship to be able to explain beyond what the job description is, and probably assess the kind of questions that can be there in the mind of the candidate at this point of time. I think that's one large challenge that recruiters are facing and will continue to face. Um, this is the period of great resignations. I think we all have heard and read and much spoken word, the period of the great resignation. So with the great resignation, I think what comes as a very important point is also need for doing better compensation structuring and understanding well in advance, probably negotiating with our customers. I think that's a huge skill, and it's on the hands of the recruiter to be able to come back and communicate to your clients or the candidate what is required on both sides effectively before an offer is really rolled out. Because if your expectation setting on both sides is right, is when you can actually kill the deal. Otherwise, if you think that let's get the candidate to pick up or let's get the client to select the candidate or candidate to sort of see whether there is an offer and then we will sort of sit on the negotiation table, I think we are too late already. So the time is actually at the time of screening where both sides expectation needs to be understood, and client organizations are very open to doing expectation setting of the candidate, and a lot of our client organizations, or for that matter corporates which are hiring, are open to evaluating compensation provided information is well known in advance, because that helps the entire process flow. So I think that's one skill which is becoming more and more important for recruiters, and I think upskilling there is extremely important. All these were not, it's not that they were not relevant earlier, I think they were relevant, but the need, because of the entire paradigm shift in terms of the way one would hire and one would want to sort of onboard, is completely changed. This is a far more important area that one can see the role in. So if I can safely put it that the role of recruiters earlier, where it was largely based on scrapping and sourcing, has moved from there to probably marketing and communicating and probably negotiation skills, stakeholder management. These are the areas that one would sort of have to do and play the cards on. I think these are the changes that I'm seeing post pandemic, post paradigm shift on technology. So I I think I've covered it in time.
Thank you, Pramod. It has been a very detailed point by point covering of all the pointers you mentioned, especially about the tech candidates, understanding the tools of the client, digital hiring, validity of the candidates, good keyword searcher. I think these have been very vital insights which you have mentioned over here. I would like to request now Mr. Vijay Shivram, who is the CEO of Quest IT Staffing. Thank you for sparing your time, sir. If you can share your vital insights about this subject which you're trying to discuss among ourselves. Over to you, Mr. Vijay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think Pramod took a lot of weight off my shoulders. He covered most of the topics that are very relevant today. I'll try to take a little tangential shift on that. But for those who are listening in, I'm not sure how many of you maybe, but I started my career as a recruiter, and I used to run small teams of hiring people for customers then. And today, as you all must be aware, Quest leads 900 recruiters or so. But when I started my career as a recruiter, the upskilling journey that I took at that point, and I'm not trying to show how old I am, but the upskilling journey that time was to learn how to use a portal. Because when we started that time, we didn't have portals to use. And when the first set of portals came into India, I do recall I was undergoing training on how to use portal, and they believed that was the future. And today, I think the upskilling journey of the recruiter is to see how we can go beyond portals. So it's a funny time for me to actually say that I learned how to upskill myself. But I think the point that I'm trying to make over here is that that journey of upskilling does not change. I think there's this need to consistently keep upgrading yourself, whether you're an IT professional, whether you're a sales professional or a recruiter professional. A recruiter doesn't really make much of a difference. But I think today, what's happened during the post-COVID scenario and the surge that's happened in the recruiting side is that suddenly the recruiter has become in a full focus approach. Everyone wants to know how big their recruiting teams are, how their recruiting systems are, what is the tech behind it. So suddenly the recruiter has taken a significant amount of limelight. And in many conversations that I've had with very senior professionals, today the recruiter has become a revenue earner. Historically, many people saw recruitment or recruiters as a cost function. Many of them saw them as a support function. But today, the recruiter, whether housed in a corporate or whether housed in a recruiting agency or a staffing, is now a significant contributor to the revenue. In fact, it has come to many levels that more number of recruiters actually generate more sorts of revenue. And therefore, that makes two things very clear. One, there is going to be a career path for every recruiter that joins in an organization, because today, to keep the recruiter engaged and to let the recruiter grow in the system becomes of prime importance. It is not more just a support function. And second, the good ones and the recruiters that stand out and upskill themselves, they have a better chance of growing faster than a recruiter that tends to believe in some basic systems that they've been using for the last 10 years or last 5 years, etc. So without doubt, I think today the need for upskilling of recruiters has come from the approach that on how critical they are to the system. Okay, so the good news is that I think many of the recruiters in the market today know that they are quantifying their value every day. The bad news is that they still operate the way that they used to for the last 3 years, 5 years, etc. And I keep telling myself this because when you work with a large team of recruiters, the biggest problem that we have as recruiters, and I speak for myself as a recruiter, is we follow what you call as a control F fatigue. The JD has a particular title or a particular skill, and if we don't see that skill on the CV, we tend to reject it, right? So the recruiters are used to a keyword formatted search or a control F kind of a search, and that decides whether that candidate is good or bad. Not what he's done or she's done, but it decides on what the control F nature of what comes out. Does Java come out 10 times? Does Sail come out 10 times? Oh, he must be a good CV. Right. So I think that's one, the recruiter mindset has to go through for an upgrade. I think definitely across organizations, I do see this as a significant gap where recruiters tend to assume that this is the only path forward is use one portal or use two portals and that's about it and life is done. But I think that is diminishingly coming down because of the fact that every recruiter is thinking the same thing. So then you don't bring any new thing to the platform, to yourself, to your corporate or your client. Yes, sir. So I think I try to pen down 4 things that I considered as the new hygiene for recruiters and why I believe these 4 things are critical to the upskilling programs that companies would do as such. Many of you may be aware that the group Quest recently signed up with XLRI to build a recruiter certification program. We believe that when we start doing a program with an institute like XLRI, we should not talk about how to source, but what are the other elements of recruiting that makes the journey more improved and how you can benefit the organization by doing that. So I think point number 1, I think today, gone are the days where you could just submit 100 profiles and get away with it. I think today, the basic hygiene today is getting to candidate experience. There have been conversations that I have heard recruiters that I've worked with where they would spend not more than 20 seconds with a candidate. Have you applied to this company? What is your current CTC? Okay, I'm submitting a profile. If you're shortlisted, I'll call you back. That's it. That was the conversation. Neither does the candidate know who called. Neither does the candidate know where his CV is going. He might have forgotten. And let's say tomorrow, if he has a question also, he doesn't know who to call back to. So the candidate experience systems have to improve. And I think this is not something which you can just turn the key and become an expert. You have to reskill yourself to know what each candidate wants. Because at the end of the day, the beauty about, and I think Pramod touched upon this, the beauty about our recruiting program is that the human element is significantly high. And therefore, each experience is different. It's not like buying 10 products and you expect all of them to be the same. Here, each candidate comes in different shapes, different sizes, different mental aptitudes, and therefore candidate experience is hyper-personalized. And hence, you need to be trained and upskilled to know what to do in what situation. Second, I think one of the biggest cracks in the system today, and I must be honest, I think all of us are party to it, including corporates and large organizations, is closure management. I think today we leave candidates hanging left, right, and dry, not knowing where their candidates are. 1, because we don't get an update from our clients, or 2, rejected hair, so he'll understand, he'll forget it, move on. So I think closure management is a significant crack, and why that's important today is because it kind of ensures the candidate to come back to you for other roles, rather than having a bad taste in their mouth saying, I never got a call back. I'm sure all of you on the call today would have heard from the candidates that you speak to saying that I've applied to 100 jobs, but not even one called me. So I think closure management is something which is extremely critical. Again, this is process centric. You need to know the bottlenecks and you need to know where the issues are. Pramod also spoke, and I'd like to re-emphasize that, the channel mix of candidates. If you know how to coordinate and work with the candidate, which I think every recruiter that I know is amazingly good at, to get a candidate from a source to a screen to a validate. But I think where many recruiters fail to pick up on is the channel mix. How do you ensure that you go beyond the portals? What do you, the usual, when you introduce a new tool or a new tech system, most managers or recruiters would think, this will solve all my problems. It doesn't. A new tool or a new tech system actually just complements your existing system. And it's very, very important for everyone on this audience to know that, don't expect big changes overnight. But as you progress, I've heard many firms who started using, say, a professional networking platform beyond the portals. The first 3 months, they would not even get one select. But as the months go, you'll start realizing what the potential of those platforms come. Then you start looking at tools. The most simplest problem which remains unsolved for many companies is your own internal database management system. You have 100 base recruiters, they source 8 CVs a day, so that's 800 CVs a day into 22 days a month, into 12 years. You can imagine the amount of database that's already sitting. But yet, sometimes recruiters tend to feel that requires more hard work than going to Naukri or Monster and stuff like that. So I think internal database and channel play is going to be extremely, extremely critical for a recruiter to understand how to leverage benefit out of it. Now, many companies also, we try to push down technology. Sometimes it's a down up approach. Some recruiters come and say, I found this great site, then how do you implement it? So change management is something, again, which is a critical aspect today in a recruiter's profile. And I always say this one statement that if as a recruiter, you are doing the same type of work or sourcing that you did 2 years ago, you are risking your own career. You are kind of taking a challenge, a bet that things are not going to change when the whole world is changing around you. And the last bit, I think today, largely for managers and senior professionals in the recruiting space, I think it is not about one set of channels also. It is about different types of models. How can you leverage an RPO? How can you use a hire, train, and deploy? How do you do contract staffing? How do you do gig? I think building an ecosystem play today is going to be extremely critical. If you buy a service from a particular company, can that company accelerate to other services? And can you use that for your benefit? So again, the tendency is get the recruiters to do end-to-end. A simple thing like documentation collection for a recruiter can be automated today. But we tend to assume, no, recruiter should own up the candidate entire experience. Some people do it, and it may be right, I'm not denying it. But I think over time, as volumes increase, there are transactional processes that have to be automated. And if you don't, you're not upskilling yourself to do better as such. So in other words, I think it is very, very important that as a recruiter, you know the basic experience of how to deal with a candidate, how to deal with the client. Client could be your internal spots as well. How do you ensure closure of each candidate so that you have a goodwill in the market that people remember you? Because a recruiter in many ways is a brand of his own. So every recruiter, and I've always believed that the brand of the recruiter supersedes the quality of the recruiter's candidates. I know clients who come back to me and say, I want that recruiter to work for me. And I think that is something which everyone in this call should leverage and tell your teams on how to leverage that as well. Apart from that, the basic construct of recruiting is to know at least a 3-level depth knowledge of what you're sourcing for. It hurts me sometimes when a recruiter gets a JD of 2 lines and starts sourcing. I'm not saying JD should be 2 pages, but I know sometimes customers just share Java 2 years, 100 positions, and you're expected to know that. But I can guarantee you that every recruiter you speak to will tell you also that it is what the hiring manager wants and not what comes on the paper that matters. And therefore, at least a 3-level depth of asking questions. Why do you want to hire this position? What is the position expected to do, and how is this position going to evolve? I think even just those 3 questions is good enough for you to start sourcing. But sometimes we're so attuned to the speed at which we have to operate and submit 100 profiles per day, submit 200 profiles per day. We tend to forget that some basic itself should be there to get things going. And I understand. I think there are organization ecosystems that don't allow you to do it, but push as much as you can on that. Since we are dealing with people of all sorts, like Pramod was mentioning, tech is an enabler to this entire human element. But know what tech to use when. You have to go to office one day. You could choose the bus, you could choose your car, you could pick up a taxi, you could take an auto rickshaw, you could choose different modes of transportation to achieve the same goal. But what do you want to achieve out of that goal? I think is you want to reach faster, you want to be more comfortable, you want to play safe on cost. It all depends on what you as a recruiter decide your approach has to be. And as you build that approach of choice, it is very important to know which tool can help you reach that goal. So if you want to believe that ATS system will allow you to source more and that is your need, if you believe an assessment engine will help you assess better, choose those tools smartly because they are enablers. They are not going to solve 200 position closures in 1 week. No, they're going to enable you to achieve that goal as such. And last but not the least, I think, which is becoming, for me, this is one of the most important points of a recruiter's journey today, to be upskilled. Even if I remove all the other points which I can teach in some form of a process, the ability to negotiate is of prime importance in today's market. The candidate ecosystem today is, I wouldn't want to use the word greedy, but is aggressive. And when the candidates are getting aggressive, you should know what to negotiate on. And the beauty about it, and I can assure you that every recruiter on this call today says one thing, that all candidates are not after money. If you know what strings to pull, actually you will learn. And negotiation is a very funny thing. It's not just an art, it's also a science. There are methods to negotiate better. There are methods to identify what are the strings that you pull that the candidates will listen to, etc. So, and let's be smart. I think at this point of time, I think candidates know how to negotiate with recruiters better than the recruiters. It should be the other way around. And so for me, the upskilling programs that each of you will have to go through in life as recruiters is to look at the larger goal. Is as your career paths evolve into leading recruiters, as your career paths evolve into leading talent functions for organizations and for your own organizations, etc., whether you're revenue linked or non-revenue linked, there are elements of the process that you need to keep upskilling yourself on. And my sincere request to everyone on the call and the teams that you manage, etc., is that don't assume that recruiters can join today and operate at an efficiency tomorrow. They have to be consistently trained. Otherwise, they will lose out on the race, because there are companies, there is somebody sitting somewhere in the world trying to automate our process. And if we are not ahead of that game, then somebody is going to capture that game. Back to you, Saurabh.
Thank you so much, Vijay. In fact,
I just wanted to add, and I wanted to come in. If you allow me a minute.
Please come.
I mentioned something very interesting, and I wanted to take that pick from here. One of the things that we've seen our recruiters, and this is not upskilling, but probably a mindset. A lot of our recruiters internally, obviously, there is competition amongst recruiters, and which should be there as well. But with competition, I think what we also lack as organizations is, or recruiters individually lack this in the organizations. There's limited co-working within the own ecosystem. I would want. I think you, Vijay, you mentioned that point there, and I wanted to pick up that point. I think we ourselves don't communicate effectively on a spreadsheet or on our own tools what the candidate that we communicated with can be used for, or what are the other opportunities that person is interested, if not my own position at this point of time. And if not today, then the very next day within your own community of your people, or probably you never know, after 4 days, the same candidate you are actually exploring, that knowledge that you stored there can come back of your own use to your own self or your own colleagues. I think that's one thing that I see a big miss. Earlier technology would not be so easy. Even if you were using spreadsheets, it was one spreadsheet, yours and my spreadsheet. But today we have co-working spreadsheets, which are like Google Docs or Zoho Sheets, if you're using a spreadsheet. If you're not using a spreadsheet and an ATS tool, far more collaborative. So I think the approach of us collaborating and making a mindset shift that no, this candidate is of not use to me, but potentially my organization will gain. I think that's one change that we need to bring, because candidate is no one's. It's only when the candidate joins, it becomes of someone. So if you think that you own the candidate and you would like to keep it, putting it on the spreadsheet for the organizational other recruiters to leverage, or if you put in an update in your own tool, you lose that candidate. You anyway lost the candidate because it's not yours. If it's not meant for you right now, you lost it. So I think that's one collaborative shift of mindset we need to go through. I think that's one point I wanted to bring on. Vijay mentioned it subtly, but I wanted to pick up that and detail it out clearly.
Very true, very true.
Thanks,
When
sir.
I started my career as a recruiter, we used to save every CV, and we used to never give the CV. We used to code the CV in the file name, the candidate name, the location, the years of experience, the key skill, and expected CTC and current CTC in the name of the file. So when we search for the candidates tomorrow, it was easy. Now we have ATS, of course, thankfully.
Profiling was that, Vijay. I think we've all done. If you've started your journey 20 years back, you've done your profiling in that way for sure. Of course. So almost like tags, today we have tags in every tool, wherever. So it actually works that way tag is. If you tag your resume and know how to leverage those tags as an organization, as recruiters within your own community, co-working, the best way to work and best way to leverage I mean, you mentioned you have about 900 people, I have about 200. If all our people sort of park the information well inside the tool, that itself is a very large knowledge base. We are, of course, a knowledge industry. The only way we can gain upwards in value is by making sure that our knowledge is utilized by us or easily utilizable by us or within our own colleagues in ecosystem. So I think that's where it is. Saurav, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Pramod. Thank you, Vijay. Thank you so much. In fact, the pointers that have been mentioned by Vijay was again bang on to the core, to the detail. In fact, to the basics of a recruitment as a process. And I completely agree. In fact, the last one is the negotiation part, which Vijay rightly mentioned, that how do you negotiate with the candidate? That is something as a skill which a recruiter definitely inculcates with the time and the keep on ongoing and consistent training. So we have one question over here from Pramod. If you allow me, can I read it? Pramod, you are mute, Pramod.
Oh, please, absolutely. Please go ahead.
It is recruitment business are usually blocked to the concept of upskilling and training recruitment teams, citing high attrition as reasons. They would also rather give them seat doing their core job. How do you suggest we initiate a dialogue within a staffing business on this? What will it take to create a mindset shift? So, Pramod, Vijay, anyone who would like to answer?
I can start because we just launched that program. First of all, I think I read it in some WhatsApp forward, so I don't know who the source is, but somebody once sent a WhatsApp forward saying that what if you train people and if they go? So the response was, what if you didn't train and they stayed? Your training is not necessarily always a retention system. Training and upskilling is to improve the organization's productivity and outcome. A recruiter who is upskilled, I can assure you that the customers will understand that far more better than a recruiter who's not upskilled. So I think to change mindset, it is from business leadership, especially promoter run or tier 2 or tier 3 organizations as such, is to value to make sure that you want improved outcomes, and that lies the basis of adding training as a capacity. So whether it's a call center environment or whether it's a BPO or a corporate organization, L&D is a critical aspect of it all. And when recruiter is the core of what you offer as your business, and if you don't train them, then you can also expect the outcomes will really be of that value. So I think that's how you would want to position it, I would say. My take.
I think you're well covered, Vijay. I think you covered it all. If your challenge, I just wanted to draw attention on, if your challenge is to convince your own organizational management about the need of the same, if that is what it is, it's very, very important to take a different alignment. I think you will need to possibly come back and dialogue out the benefits of the same with your management in case you're facing that challenge. If your confusion is with that, because I think you mentioned, how do you suggest we initiate a dialogue within the staffing business on this? So if it's largely a management driven challenge that you're facing, then of course you have to take a different route. But by and large, one of the things that I have seen, at least within my own experience, is beyond management, more than the management or the your business heads, I think it's the independent recruiters who I see probably the ones missing out on the days, so I think when you have a drive date and if you have a training environment, anybody would like to come back and pick and choose that drive date is more important than the training program. But I think if the recruiters have to take a mindset, they will need to proactively reach out to their own training heads, training departments, and look at when they could sort of come back and schedule it. I think that second one never happens to my mind. I think I see more and more recruiters not wanting to be a part of those sessions. That's what my experience has said. So I think it's more about a mindset shift that we need to internally make, that learning and continuous learning is very important and upskilling is the game. I think that's where it largely I see the challenge.
So we have a couple of more questions over here. This question has been directed to Mr. Vijay. The question is, how important is the role of leads as mentor that recruiters report to for developing and enhancing the 4 data points mentioned?
Brilliant question. I think there are 3 elements of mentorship. One is a mentorship to achieve a certain standard. So as leaders, team leaders, assistant managers, and I think team leaders in this context is a very, very, very important part of the wheel, because the team leaders act as guidances to form a certain standard of what needs to be submitted, what needs to be sourced, because they are the first and only source for a recruiter to learn from. So I think guidance is critical from that standpoint. Second, I think the second component of coaching and mentorship is on career growth. Now, a recruiter can choose multi facets of growth. They could choose to become a team leader. They could choose to become an SME in their space as an individual contributor. They could look at moving up the value chain of a recruiter to move towards senior positions, mid-level, CXO level positions, etc. The recruiter could tend to make an industry shift across different aspects as such. Like HR or something like that. So it's important that the career counselor or the career coach also plays a very critical aspect. And that can be the TL again, or it could be someone else that they may or person know as such. And last but not the least, I think it is about the tech part. There should be someone who's always constantly in touch with the recruiter, telling them how new tools are there in the market. And as recruiters build their networks and understanding of newer systems, their adoption of these systems are also good. So while all of them can be rolled into one person, I don't think so that it has to be 3 different people, but it can be 3, it can be more, etc. For example, personally for me, even today, I have a network of people that I consistently engage with and trying to ask them what are the new tech systems that they are leveraging to solve a problem. And you'll be surprised that a lot of the problems in recruiting actually can be solved by technology solutions used in supply chain. Because functionally, that's our problem. Our talent supply funnel has to be improved. There are bottlenecks, there are process changes. And you'll find a lot of examples in manufacturing and supply chain processes that actually have very similar problems, and they've already solved it. So we just need to learn from it, adapt it to our business, and try to run with it. I hope that answers the question, or at least tries.
Yeah, very well. In fact, my next question is for Mr. Prabodh, and I would like to request Pramod if you can elaborate regarding, as if you have a pretty organized structure in terms of STD model for recruiters. So how do you think your SME and MSME members can be benefited through your STD model or program which you are already running?
See, largely our HTD for recruitment was an outcome of our own learnings while we are wanting to sort of hire people. So Vijay and Quest, of course, has gone ahead and tied up with XLRI, and I think that's a wonderful program. What our program does, we have 2 levels of program, and largely focused on one, to look at people who haven't touched or have no clarity or have no understanding of what the recruiting world is. Could be good for a fresher and could be good for people who want to come back and not having recruitment experience gain. The second one is a lateral program, which is largely focused on upskilling you to certain domains, because at the end of the day, and Vijay mentioned this, and I also, I think, tried covering there, if today we need to go beyond just knowing the resume, and I think Vijay mentioned 3 levels of depth that one needs to get into. So the domain knowledge, whether you do IT or non-IT, in IT there could be 100 stack skills. the depth of knowledge one needs to do or gain is just beyond the keywords that one would do, because a keyword search is far more done better with technology or automation and bot. I think the problem statement starts is after you've had your 30 resumes stacked out, where number of keywords or number of counts of keyword, if I can put it, has already been done. So what and how do you filter your resume beyond that requires extensive domain knowledge. So our programs are around that, and I think that's what we need to do, and that's what a good HTD model for the staffing business or the recruitment business has to be. So,
Vijay, I have one more question for you. This is regarding, as if rightly discussed, that Quest has tied up with XLRI for the recruiters training program. So we want to know exactly how this program is can be helpful for our MSME, SME members again, and how do they connect with somebody who's spearheading from your organization, and how if they want some more information about it.
So thanks for bringing it up. So I think the XLRI program was coined to see how we can create an enabling system for recruiters to keep themselves relevant in these changing times, and how do they start looking at beyond just acquiring talent, but also engaging talent and managing talent. So it's a bridge program that talks very different aspects of talent acquisition, human resource, etc., and of course done by XLRI. So I don't have to explain how strong XLRI is in that subject. The course is an open course. It was created for the ecosystem of recruiters in Quest, 900 people, for them to start upgrading themselves as such. But the course content was fairly rich, and XLRI felt that they had a lot of takers. In fact, when the program went live a couple of weeks ago on the site, even without any push from our side or from the, they already had a huge number of applications that were coming through, because a lot of corporates also are trying to upskill their recruiters as well. And we saw some very interesting. So I'm just going back to the point that Pramod had brought in. It's not necessarily that always the head of the business should invest money and keep upskilling, right? There's also recruiters who also have to do their bit sometimes. So I think it has to be a combination of both. Sort of, there should be organizations who are looking at upgrading their recruiters and getting that beneficial outcome. And there should be people also who are recruiters themselves who want to start seeing them to do more. And by imagine having a XLRI certification on your CV as a recruiter, your brand value will definitely go up. And therefore, you should be able to command more promotions, more salaries, and more benefits. So I think it's a mix of both. The program details are very, very clear and outlined in the XLRI website. What I can do, if anyone is interested, I'm happy to share the link to you, Saurabh, and you can share it with them as such. But it is there on the XLRI website itself, and it's a recruiter program. Anyone can apply directly. We don't govern the program. We only help with the content, and we will be providing every batch with a bunch of Quest recruiters as well.
Sure. Thank you, Vijay. Thanks a lot for the information. In fact, I was about to ask the last question. In fact, can the recruiters they can enroll directly or individually into such programs? This question is for both. Pramod, in your case also, can they enroll directly?
Absolutely. We run both the programs. Client organizations also certain times and most of the times have a batch required. So that's always a program that one can enroll. And individually also one can choose to join our programs. Absolutely. That's available on our website also, Saurabh. I would have my team share the same details as well.
Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. In fact, I would like to really thank.
Sorry, there's I think one question on the chat, probably
Yes.
was on the Q&A, which is missed out. How's the market trend for field hiring in India and post-COVID? Any special attention to be done for upscaling volume recruiters? So I think I saw that it was a pretty interesting question. I wanted to take that up before we would close it. So I think I mentioned that, in my earlier time, that sourcing strategy and what's up sourcing, I did cover some bit of it. To give you a gauge over the same, that the field hiring, if you at all mean field hiring means for, how people would go feet on the street and sort of hire. I think there are certain skills one can only do it with field hiring. Without the field hiring, it may not even be possible certain times to sort of collect data for certain industries, largely driven in the gray collar, blue collar, if you're hiring for factories. So there are certain things for which field hiring will always continuously be important. once you identified that for those skills field hiring is important, how you need to change and upskill on that is also leverage technology there. Earlier one would go out point by point. Now today you could run referral schemes for your field hiring as well, and there are potential tools that one can use. So I think field hiring will be relevant, but with the use of technology is when it will be relevant. If you are doing conventional field recruitment and hiring, it may not be the mode of it may not be a success point anymore in future. I think in countries now, and Amazon's tried that in US, even field hiring for the blue collar is 100% automated in certain of their cities and completely. So if you're looking at where the world is heading in the field hiring, there is technology and automation. There would be a play for recruiters also. Technology never comes back and completely displaces things. It only requires or requirement of the upskilling for the recruiters will go up. So you have to leverage field hiring with the use of technology, and that's where the world is heading. Vijay, if you want to have a take on that.
No, I completely agree. I think the entire field workforce is going to be almost 60 to 65% automated in some form or the other. And I think the key to the hire there is adaptability, because I think there the recruiters have been a little old school for a long time. So adaptability, I think, will be very key to get them engaged. But I think we covered everything. I think it's perfect.
Thank you, Pramod. Thank you, Vijay. Thanks a lot for such a detailed insights and mentioning all those vital, crucial pointers regarding respect to recruiters, upskilling, and how that can contribute in growth of an organization, and what all basic traits do we need for all such important things to be inculcated on a time-to-time basis. We thank you for your time, and thanks a lot to our audiences, those who have been able to spare the time and attend the session. I'm sure this has been very helpful to all of you who all have attended. And people, those who are attending, they'll also getting a copy of this session for today. Thanks a lot. Thank you for your time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Saurav. Thanks, Vijay. Thanks, everyone.